Hi, and welcome back to VFX Tutors. I'm Josh, and in this tutorial we're going to be continuing with our chainsword. So in our previous tutorial we just did a quick reblocking of just placing some of our models that some parts of our assets we've made in our scene. So you can see here that we've sort of still got everything blocked out. There's still quite a bit to do, but it gives us a really good idea of what sort of things that else we need to do, and it gives us a good idea of it just shows us our progression really. So in this tutorial we're going to model the battery pack. So I'm actually just going to hide that. I'm just going to go to my orthographic front, select the camera and import an image. I'm just going to go to my reference just so I can show you the type of battery pack that I want to make. So I want to make something like this. I quite like the sort of, you can see the shape of the batteries in there with the shrink wrapping. You can sort of see some circuit boards in here and the wires coming out. I think there's some other reference in here. So we've got these. I was thinking about doing something like this, but just the shape of it. Obviously these are probably padded out and they look a little bit boring. I think. So yeah, we've got the sort of insides and stuff like this. So I'm kind of more going towards something like this and sort of shrink wrapped and like kind of messy. So we can pick a I don't think we need. So let's open that. And let's just bring in another one. Let's bring in the other one as well. I think I was way back here. No, what was it? There's loads of reference in it now. This has got quite a lot of. I don't want that because it kind of looks like. Because obviously it's just not going to look like batteries. I don't think I want it to look like sort of batteries. So I'm going to bring this one in as well. So we're just going to use these. I'm not going to trace around them or anything. I'm just going to use them as reference. I just like bringing image planes in because it's just easier. So it's all just in one window and you can hide them and get rid of them. So most of this is going to be pretty simple to build. We're just going to be building the insides. Then once we've done the insides, what we'll do, we'll create a shrink wrap over the top to create this to create the shrink wrap. So yeah, so it should be a pretty simple tutorial. We'll go into something a little bit different with using some Nclothe to create this and get a really nice shrink wrap effect. And yeah, so all we need to do is just build these batteries. We don't need to build them in a way that we're going to see them because it's going to be shrink wrapped. So I think if I'm just going to bring in, I think I had some more reference as well of the battery, because they're not normal batteries. They're actually much simpler than normal batteries. I thought I had some reference in it. I don't know. I might not have. Oh yeah, there we go. Our massive image. So we've got our sort of reference. Okay, it's like a reference zoo. Not that we're going to use it like that. It's just so we can sort of see our reference board here. So although we don't see much in there, I'm still going to model these fairly close to what it is, because you can actually see these sort of insets here, and I do want that as well. We can try and get as much detail in this model as possible. So I'm going to start with modeling these, and start with a cylinder. And I've actually got this from Amazon. Got that image of batteries off an Amazon shop, and those are actually 6.3 those are 6.5 millimeters tool. 6.5. 18, 1.8. I think that is gonna be circumference, so I need to half that, so that's 5. That's 0.9, sorry. Cool. So I'll just go to my perspective. And we have that from what Amazon says at the correct size. Cool, so I'm just going to model this as close as I can to this. I'm not worrying about the shrink wrap on here. We can just model this into the initial model, then we can, hopefully the shrink wrap will pick up on everything else. Cool, I'm actually going to make that big so I can see. So first of all, I'm just going to select these forward. Just going to select all the faces and deselect them. Then I'm just going to Control E, extrude them in. No, offset, sorry. So 0.45 or something like that. I don't think it's that much, 0.3. Because if we look here, well, it might be. We're not going to see this, but we kind of want to get it as close as possible. So when we do the shrink wrap, it kind of shows it all off and it kind of looks cool. So just going to get the thickness down there. Control E again, and offset. Control E again. And we can just bring this down manually. So I'll just go to my orthographic front. You want it to pop out just so we can see it a little bit. Control E. Oh, Control E. I'm just going to delete those and it's going to fill those edges. So fill the hole. And I've just realised I didn't check how many sides, so I've got probably way more sides than I probably should have, but it's a little bit different if we're shrink wrapping it, because we need it quite high. We don't want it too low poly because our shrink wrap has to work with a fairly high poly sort of mesh, or at least something that's been smoothed quite a lot, so don't worry too much about that. So fill the hole again, multi-cut. And it's always good to, if you're working with lots of cylinders, to make sure that you do fix the ends on these, because you can get some quite horrible pinching when you smooth it. And it doesn't take very long to do. It doesn't have to look pretty, because we're not going to see it. Cool. So now I'm just going to go around and select the edges. Gonna bevel those ones because I think they're going to be a little bit tighter. Bevel bevel this one a little bit looser. We've got the reference there, so we can just check on that. So I'm not too bothered that it's going to be too high res, because we are going to just shrink wrap over it, and we may not even need to have these textured or rendered because we're just not going to see them. Cool. So this is, most of this is just prep work for doing the shrink wrap. But it'll be worth it because you get a nice realistic sort of shrink wrap look. So I'm also going to do these bits in here as well. So I'm just going to guesstimate that with a single cut on each one. Select them both and bevel them. Add some segments in. Just very slightly scale it. Just so when you do see it, you can see there's a slight bump. Nothing crazy. Just we're just doing very subtle things. Like the shrink wrap may not even pick up on this, but it's those ever so slight things. You might need these batteries for something else later on. Cool. And you can sort of see we've made a very, very basic battery. And you can add some more stuff in if you want, but I think we actually need to be a bit tight on the top actually, because I think bring that one up. I'm just going to scale these out slightly so it just tightens up that bevel. Made it a little bit too soft. In fact, I'm actually gonna go to my. I'm actually gonna. Hopefully I can turn that one off. Node behavior. Start with that one. Okay, let's leave that. It's probably going to break it if I do. So I'm actually going to delete it and delete the one on the bottom because I just made it a little bit too soft. Delete that, and all we have to do is just select this edge, press W, hold V, just snap it so it's flat. And obviously we've got some weird shading going on here. It's because when you bevel it, it softens the edge, but now we've made it a flat edge. We'll need to go to our mesh display and harden edge. That's fine. And let's fix that. So we're doing quite a lot for something that we're not going to see again, but it's going to help with our shrink wrap. And we'll just harden that edge again. Cool. So we can probably delete that. We don't need that. So let's select those edges again and bevel that again. Sorry about that. That was need to make sure that I always double check the reference. It was just much harder And I didn't like how soft it was. Maybe you can add an extra segment in there. So that looks much better. So we've got a really basic battery. And we're done with that. So I'm just going to freeze it, delete all the history, and censor the pivot. So now I want to create. I want this in my sort of outcome. I like where the circuit board's here, but I don't think. I'd rather it on the side where it is on here. So I'm going to make this, but I'm just going to use this as reference for building it. So that's 3 deep and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we can hide that. We don't need that. We've got our battery. And if I just duplicate this. Now imagine they're not perfectly tight together. There's probably some sort of padding in between, but we don't need to do the padding. So I can manually do this, or go to Edit, Duplicate Special. I'm going to reset it. What direction? That's in the X. So translate X minus 1.8, and it was 7, so I just need to do 6. We don't have. We can do more. We can do more than 6. We want it quite. It needs to be quite powerful. So, but that's 7 by. It's a lot of batteries there. So I want to do some more. So I'm just going to duplicate it, and let's just say that kind of looks. Let's move these out of the way. That one's probably okay, so we can probably select one. We don't have to do it 3 by 3. We can duplicate these. We can do it like that, or we can sort of stagger them. This is obviously going to give us a much different shape. Probably a more interesting shape, to be honest. Let's duplicate that side. And let's have a little think of the shape. Cool, so before I do go any, I'm just going to select all this, I'm just going to group it. I'm going to unhide my chainsword, and I'm just going to look at it. Actually, these batteries may seem they're absolutely huge, so I've probably picked the wrong size batteries. Let me just measure. So an AA battery is way smaller than that. But got batteries rolling over my desk now. Kind of cool. That sort of fits. Doesn't really fit there at all. We could sort of just duplicate that and just see what that. Obviously, this is a bit crazy here, but maybe we don't need to do two. In fact, maybe if we somehow mounted it like that. Somehow offset them. Don't forget, we can rotate this motor and have it flip the other way. So it look like this. Maybe 3 is a bit too many, because I just want to make sure that it looks at least reasonable before I go any further with shrink wrapping it, because we have like added a lot more, so who's to say it wouldn't power it. And that'll just be shrink wrapped around it. So maybe even this. What if it's not offset, so it looks, so it would be wider. Let me just get a cylinder. And let's just measure that battery quickly. Just measure the battery to 4.8. So they are a bit small, so let's make sure that we're, because if we start messing too much with the scale, that's where we're going to start breaking things, I think. So it is quite a big difference. They look very big though. So I just want to make sure that I get something decent size and a sort of position. So actually I think what looks kind of alright is think we'll just go with that for now. Doesn't seem very wide. Let's just unhide those again. I think let's just go with that. I think that looks alright. So we'll zero that back out again. Cool. So we got our batteries. We can always scale this up and move it around, but I'm quite happy with that size. So if we look at this, we can sort of see some joining bits maybe. So let's probably just do the circuit board because we're not going to see a huge amount. So we don't have to go into too much detail with this. Just need to make it at least look like there's something under there on top. What happens if I do just hide those? I think maybe let's just stick with the let's bring that back and see what it's like if we do it like that. Because that's more realistic to the size. We don't necessarily need it that long. I think that'll be cool. Yeah, I'm gonna go with something like that. You can obviously make your own, but you can make your battery pack much larger if you want, or anything like that. It's entirely up to you, really. But I'm just going to show you the methods that I go through to sort of make it. So I'm going to push that there. It's quite thin. Doesn't matter so much if it's intersecting. It does matter that we make these edges softer. We can just Control D. Let's make some random circuitry. It doesn't have to make a ton of sense, just it has to be something when we like shrink wrap over it. Okay, it's not the exact replica of a chipboard, but once you shrink wrap it, you'll probably never know. I just want these power buttons. Probably just make this a little bit bigger. Just Control D that out. Cool. That's where our cables will be coming out of. I guess we can just look. That'll be right. Yeah, I think that'll be more than enough. So I'm going to do the same again with the. In fact, actually, I'm going to pick some. I probably need to put some sort of padding in there. Let's not worry about that. This should be fine. We can make some fake tape holding it together. Because we need the same amount. We need the same amount of batteries. We need that at least. Let's just Control D that and. Just gonna pull that up, and you can see the effect of the beveling now that we've scaled quite a bit of these things up. That's why you kind of don't really want to scale your bevels. Scale and think non-uniformly that's been beveled, sorry. So we can pretend that this is maybe a foam wedge or something. Doesn't have to be perfect, just so it doesn't fill out that gap. Cool, so let's create a cylinder. This is going to be our cable. Let's choose 0.1. And it will be the same as our sort of other ones, where we are. It's quite thin. So we only really need to have it come out a bit. It will. Because we're just gonna shrink wrap this, it should be fine. But I don't want it coming out the top here, I want it sort of coming out the middle. So I can cover it, so I don't want any of this sort of showing, I just want the shape. So to do this, I will need to model it a little bit. So I'm just going to select the faces. Straight away start with a rotation. I want this folding down here. Probably a little bit squashed. So as I'm doing this, I'm just also going to get these rotations looking much nicer. Cool. Let's just go back to our faces. Let's just scale that flat for now. Let's make it a little bit wobbly. And our cable's going to start coming out around about here. Forgot to scale that back into shape. Whoops. And it looks kind of rough at the moment, but once we've got it wrapped, you won't see any of this. You'll just see the faint sort of indication that there's a cable there, hopefully. Control E. I'm just going to pull this out there because that's probably as far as I'm going to do, and we can sort of adjust this later on when we actually because I don't want to start modeling loads of cables and stuff until I know exactly where I'm going to place them, because I can just create a spline and sort of rough it out that way, then extrude it along the spline without having to waste a lot of time. So I know it looks a bit weird that I'm just keeping it there. Awesome. Let me just duplicate that, and that'll be the other cable. Push them tight. I'm just pushing these around to make them a little bit more. See if they were taped together on the inside. But cool. So we've got something pretty close. Let's actually scale this. We can pretend it's like a rubber pad or something. We got some detail here. Our cable's coming out. Cool. So what we need to do is sort of like model around this now. In fact, thinking about it, I'm going to make sure this goes down to the center, at least. Maybe put some more subdivisions on there, just so I can make it so it's not perfectly straight down. Because the more detail we get in this, the better our shrink wrap will look. Cool. So I'm just going to select all of that. Just freeze transform is delete. And I'm actually just going to group it all for now. So, in fact, I'm going to Shift P, then group it all. So I'll get rid of these old groups. These are old cylinders, we don't need those. So we'll just try and keep everything tidy as we go along. So. Cool. So we've now got our batteries that will power off our motors. So now we need to sort of shrink wrap it, and this is where we'll probably cover up most of this, and we're just wanting to get this sort of shape and an indication of what's under there. So you kind of want to get this. If you don't want some things, you can take them out or change them around, but I think this should be fine. So first of all, I'm just going to create a cube. Just going to scale this up. I'm just going to scale it until it's fitting the whole area. And what I need to do now, so now I've got that completely covered. If I go to my mesh, smooth, you can see that's made quite a few subdivisions, but now it's kind of shrunken in. So I'm just going to scale this up one more time. Center pivot. I'm just going to scale this up and pretty much use the scale tool to roughly get it covered, because now we've got some decent topology on our shape, but now we need to make sure this whole thing is completely covered. So if you wanted, because we've got quite sharp edges here, I'm just going to roughly scale it up there, and then select these edges, these vertices, and just scale them out like that. The topology, what it looks like right now, doesn't matter too much. What matters is that we've got a nice mesh that we can subdivide a lot, because we're going to need to subdivide it a lot, basically. But we need to make sure, for the shrink wrap to work its best, to make sure everything's covered. It doesn't matter if it doesn't look beautiful at the moment. All that matters is we've got everything covered. And if we just go to our X-ray, we see we've pretty much got everything covered now. The one thing that I want to do is, because we've also got no holes in here now, so I'm just going to select, because with shrink wrap, it's kind of like a tube. Let's turn that wire X-ray off. I accidentally deleted one on the back already. So it's kind of like a tube when you shrink wrap something, and it just goes round. So we need at least 2 holes. So the most we'll see is probably these 2 batteries and these end ones. So we can probably maybe texture those as well when we're at that point. But at the moment we just want that nice sort of shape. So I'm just gonna, you don't need to do this, this is just making it tidy, but because I guess it does matter a little bit that it's, your edge flow is a little bit okay, is not too jagged, because when you shrink wrap it, it's going to sort of shrink from its position. So if some vertices are sort of closer than the other, they might shrink faster. But either way, we should get a pretty decent result. So probably want to. What I'll do when I'm doing stuff like this, I'll just duplicate it and hide it. So I've always got that as a backup. So I'm just going to call this backup. And you probably want to save it. So now what we want to do, we want to smooth this again. So I'm just going to go smooth. And we can add more divisions. So obviously more divisions we add, the heavier it's going to get. And we can see that we're starting to show some. So let's smooth it once, then select and just make sure we've got nothing poking through. So I'm just going to select my vertices, press B for soft selection, and just double click on my tools, go to soft selection, just bring that up. Just so I don't have to keep manually picking one or two. Multiple, I can just now select one, then sort of there's a soft selection around it. Just want to make sure I'm just gonna do that to all the corners, even though they're not showing through. They might just be really close. Cool. Just gonna delete the history on that. And I'm just going to go edit mesh and smooth again. I'm going to go for 3 subdivisions at the moment. It's quite a lot, but we should get something pretty decent. So I'm just going to hide this and then just call this shrink wrap. I'm going to hide that. So the next thing that we need to do, we have grouped these, but so also what I'm going to do, I'm just going to duplicate that. Oh no, undo that. I'm going to duplicate my batteries, and hide that. I'm going to call these batteries wrap. That doesn't actually matter because actually I need to select them all. And go mesh, combine, freeze them, delete all the history and center the pivot, because it needs to be one object. And also I'm just going to go mesh, smooth. I'm just going to put one mesh move on it. And delete all history. Cool. So we've got our geo that we're going to wrap our batteries sort of shrink wrap around. And we have our shrink wrap. So it's not looking super pretty at the moment, so we'll just go through. In fact, before we do that, make sure we freeze it, delete all the history, because it can be quite heavy doing this, but you should get a pretty decent result. And looking at that, we do actually have something poking through still. Cool. So let's now go into Nclothe and prep our sort of wrap. So we've got our Nclothe mesh and we want to shrink wrap this. What I want to do first, actually, I'm just going to hide that. Where's my backup? I think I've made, or I want to make this hole smaller. So I'm just going to fill that hole, because I didn't realize that obviously because I'm going to shrink wrap and it's probably going to stretch quite a lot. So I'm just going to fix this hole. I'm going to fill that. Just fix those. Sorry about that. Because we don't really want it to. So if we press 3. Cool. We're gonna have some funny edge shading on there, but it should be fine. We can just select them all and just to modeling mesh display, soften edge. Now it looks sort of round. Cool. So I'm going to go to my mesh. In fact, I'm going to duplicate this as my backup. Ooh. I'm going to duplicate this again. I always have my backup. Then I'm just going to mesh. Smooth that one more time. Then I'm just going to freeze, delete, center pivot. I'm just going to delete those 4 because it's going to stretch quite a bit. I just realised it's probably going to give us a very undesired result if we make the hole too big. I've got some bits poking out here, so I'm just going to select my soft selection. I'm just going to make sure everything's covered. I know we don't see it there, but I'm just going to push it out to be doubly sure. Cool. So we can, let's duplicate that and have that as a low res backup, hide that, and we can mesh smooth that again. Obviously the lower res mesh that we have, the less detail we have, but then the higher res will have more detail, but it will be more costly to sort of figure out. For something like this, we can be quite expensive with the solving. So I'm going to hide that, and we want backup one. I'm just going to start on my low res one because it's going to be faster processing. So first of all, I'm going to just make sure it's all clean, no history, centered. And then go to my modeling, FX, Nclothe, and create an Nclothe. So the next thing I need to do is select my battery wrap, because this is what it's going to collide against. I need to select my Nclothe and create passive collider. So now that, whatever that does, that's going to collide with it. So before I do anything, I want to make sure that my frame range is set to 20 frames. Because basically the way you sort of simulate this, you have to press play and it plays through all the keyframes. So if you've got like 1,000 frames, you can press escape to quit out of it, but if it's really heavy, it might not even read that and you might get stuck waiting for it to finish. So keeping it on 20 frames is really useful to have, because if it does get stuck and it's simming, you only have to wait 20 frames instead of like 2,000. Then the next thing is go to your settings and make sure playback speed is on every frame, so you see all of the simulation. Cool, so now with that 20 frames and on, so if you just press play, we can sort of now see what's happening. And not much is happening. So we can select that, just play through. And you can see how fast this is sort of working, just as it is. Cool. So a couple of things that I want to do first is just go to my Nucleus. And this is going to be our generic sort of solver for everything. So it's going to have all our sort of gravity and wind. And for this, I actually want to remove all my gravity. So now if I press play, nothing should happen. It might wriggle a little bit, but nothing much. Then in my Nclothe shape, we can see that we've got all these sort of details here. So the first thing that we really want to do is look at our solver. So we want our collision flag on face, self collision on vertex face, then we can leave that. But we want to turn our solver display collision thickness on. And this just shows us how thick it's going to collide with. And looking at this, it's going to collide really thick because our thickness is on 0.82. So if we went to 0.01, we can see now that's much thinner. And the thinner you get, the closer it's going to be. But obviously, the more things are going to probably pop through at this sort of this low res. So with that in mind, whatever sort of collision thickness you want to do on here, you kind of want to do it on your rigid body as well, so they match up. And you can view that on, so if I actually turn that off now, you can turn it on your collider as well. You can see it here. It's quite useful to see. So I'm just going to select my Nclothe. And because we want it to shrink wrap, we don't want to drape it, we want it to sort of suck in. So if we go all the way down, we've got all these dynamic properties which we can sort of play with, but for this we don't really need to do much. We can use presets. And I want to go down to pressure. So the pressure is basically like, if I change that to 1, it should expand, or expand to whatever it can with the material. So the material is probably not stretchy. And if I had -1, it'll probably shrink in and look disgusting. Cool. So I'm going to leave it on -1 is probably quite a lot, so I'm just going to do -0.1. And you can see it's sort of wobbling around. It's almost good, like a water drop. So that's probably because our material is not the material we want. So we can sort of go to our presets, and this is the best sort of starting point. So you've got lots of choices that you can do. So you've got airbag, and these are pretty close to what they should be. You've got airbag, beach ball, burlap, chainmail, concrete and stuff. So what we probably want to go to, because we want to shrink wrap, I'm trying to think what's the closest thing to shrink wrap. Like, we've got beach ball, but that doesn't stretch, but we've got, the thing that I want to use here is basically water balloon. Because if you think of a water balloon, it stretches quite a lot, and it's exactly kind of, if you think about it, it's exactly what you want for this sort of, what we want to use it for, the shrink wrap. And you can see it's changed all our dynamic properties. And it'll probably change our pressure as well, because it will set it to water balloon. So if you press play now, it will act like a water balloon basically, and it's all wobbly. So if you wanted to make slow motion water drops, it's probably quite a cool thing to do. But we want to change to our manual pressure setting, and we can change this to -0.1. If we press play, you can now see that shrink wraps on. And you can see we're getting the effect that we want. But our thickness, yeah, our thickness is good. So if we change to 0.5, let's try that. It's sucking in really tight. Cool. But obviously our mesh is way too low res, so this is the other thing that we have. Our mesh is way too low res for what we want. So we can actually hide that. And let's select this Nclothe, and we can disable it. And we can leave our rigid on. So if we now go to this one, which is our much higher res one, and let's actually duplicate that and hide that, because we might even want to go one more step up. So I'm just going to make sure it freeze transforms and center everything so there's nothing on it. I'm just going to go to my Nclothe and create Nclothe. And I'm going to do the same again. I'm just going to go to my presets and just select water balloon straight away. I'm going to change my thickness to 0.1, 0.01. That should be the same as my collider. Then I'm just going to scroll down, and because this is still on volume tracking model, change it to manual pressure. Then I'm just going to go to -0. Let's see what it does on -0.5, and press play. This is obviously going to take quite a bit longer, but you can see now it's shrink wrapping, and it's pretty much giving us the exact effect that we want. It's just kind of coming through here at the moment, which is not ideal. So we can probably fix that by changing the thickness a little bit. And it's come through up here as well. So it could also be the speed that we're doing this is because it's sucked in really quick. You can see it's kind of quite messy around here as well. But looking at it, it's giving us all, so far it's giving us all the things that we really wanted from it. It's given us the sort of, these sort of shapes, the sucked in sides. It's just kind of broken around here. So I'm just going to reduce pressure to 0.2. And the best thing, what we'll get to is probably actually key this. I'm actually going to change my collision thickness to maybe 0.05, so it's not so tight on the edge. I'm just going to press play. And this is, a lot of the time, this is just pretty much it. You're going through, trying to figure out trying to change some settings to get a better result. And you can see that we've actually straight away got a better result just by changing those two settings. It's still not clean up here. I can see because we've got a much lower pressure, it's not sucking it in as much quite yet. So what we can do, we can sort of key from what it's actually getting there. It's pretty close to what we want. It's just kind of not liking it around there. So let's change up our thickness again. Let's change up our thickness on that. We don't want it too thick, otherwise it will not look right. It'll be floating. Not that we'll see it really, because it's all covered. And what we can do, we can change our bend drop-off angle 0.3 as well, and we could try that. So hopefully the bend drop-off angle should hopefully fix some of these tighter edges that we're having around here. It could also be that we don't really have enough geometry for what we really want. So that's another thing that we ought to consider. But it's looking pretty decent. We've just got these horrible spiky bits. Which is likely... This should be enough geometry, to be honest, but we can... Maybe let's change this to 30. And when we get to... So let's key that as a set key. Let's start at 0.1. Then maybe on the 15th key, we can change that to 0.6 maybe, and key that. So now that's going to start off, and it's going to do a gradual shrink wrap. So this could be part of our issues that we're having as well, that we're just doing too aggressive straight off. So we want it to sort of gradually build up, and now we've given it some extra frames to give it to settle. I think we may need to go on one more subdivision on that. And we can try it. We'll try one more. We'll let it go through these frames and hopefully it should settle. Don't think it is. So we're getting a really nice effect here, but we're getting some quite nasty bits here. So we're getting a really decent sort of shrink wrap effect. But I think we just don't have enough geometry. So I'm actually going to go to this one and turn this off. Hide that. Where's backup? I'm going to drop D that. Hide my backup 2 again. I'm just going to go back to my modeling, mesh, and smooth one more time. So now this is obviously going to start getting quite a lot heavier. So I'm going to make sure I delete all my history. And so I don't have to go through. Well, this should be okay. We can just, you can save out your settings if you want to keep going with that. So on my last Nclothe, I'm just going to go presets, save Nclothe. I'm just going to call it shrink wrap. Yeah, I think this one. Then now all I have to do is just go to my FX tools, Nclothe, create Nclothe. I'm going to go to my Nclothe 3, go presets, select shrink wrap, and now this has got the exact same settings as we had previously, minus the sort of keyed frames. So let's put that on 4. Change our thickness back down. Let's put our thickness back down to 1. I think it's 0.9. So just going to press play, and that's done absolutely nothing. Ooh, let's press play. Okay, why is that not done anything? Let's undo that. Okay, let's just actually select that and just make a new Nclothe. Oh, it's because we duplicated and turned it off. Okay, let's just put that on. If we press, go to our manual, which is 0.5. Now if we press play, so it's going to take much longer. It's going to be a bit, but hopefully our results should be better. Doesn't seem to be. Stop that. It seems to. Seems to be a lot worse. Obviously, we can see we've got a lot more detail though. Well, it's not actually that bad if we let it go through. So we're still getting those spiky edges. Let's start with 0.2. Let's just press play through that. So this is probably going to take quite a long time, but it's not going to be. It might be that we're just being too aggressive on the pressure. hopefully those edges should be a bit nicer. And if they are a bit spiky, we can smooth it all out afterwards. Don't worry too much. Don't want to be spending hours and hours on this. We can when we can just practically smooth it out. This is going to be quite high res, but we can fix the sort of dodgy bits. This will get us most of the way there. See how we're getting quite a nice sort of effect. Might be a bit too high res, to be honest. We could probably get away with doing the lower res one, but let's just see how it goes. And it's going to wobble around for quite a few frames until it sort of settles and the pressure sort of catches up with it. So you can see just by the second subdivision it's taken. I might actually go back to the previous mesh if we've not really got a huge amount of improvement. Apart from it's just slowing down and it's just a super dense mesh. But this gives you a good idea of what you can sort of achieve with just doing some little simpler tools. Sort of like using some of the other effects things to sort of create some other stuff. But I think maybe this is a bit too high res for what we need. So I might go back to the previous one. Just going to keep tapping escape today. That's what I mean. If because we're not really getting, I don't want to spend loads and loads of time. We could probably get this better with some more refinement. That's what I mean. If you have like 1,000 frames, you might get stuck on it processing for quite a long time. So I'm actually gonna go back to I'm gonna turn that off. And I go back to my lower res one. I think that was lower res, wasn't it? Yeah. I'm gonna go back to this one. Let's turn that on. I think subdividing it one more time was just way too much. Let's try and see if we can get a much nicer result with just this one. So this drop-off angle might help us. So the drop-off angle is sort of helping us quite a bit on the edges. So you can see it's sort of, we can move around, it's just a bit slow. Cool. So we see we're getting much nicer edges. I would like to do this with the higher res one, but it's just taking a really long time, and I don't think we're really gonna get a huge amount of difference. So I'm going to change to 0.0. 0.99, just under 1, I think. Try that. The lower we get, the sort of, we might get some weirder effects. Quit that. So we go back to maybe maybe let's just try it slightly in the minus, see if that helps us. No. Go to 0.2. Let's put this up to 1.5 maybe. Let's change our friction to 0.2 because I don't want it. I just want it to sort of. So I want that probably on minus 0.1. So you just might have to smooth it. Let's come through here. Change our thickness to 0.1. And we could, you know, let's try. We're getting a good result of this, but we haven't tried any other materials. Let's try. In fact, actually, no. Let's just leave it on this because this is what we want. Let's bring up our stretch resistance and try and see if that helps us with the. Obviously, the more stretch resistance we have, the it's gonna do great things. Let's actually lower that, see if that helps. So lowering it's helped quite a bit. So we're getting a pretty good result now, apart from it's just kind of breaking up here. So we look around. We're pretty much getting exactly what we want. It's breaking up here. Change that to 0.1. Change that to 0.6. Let's try that. So this is just trying settings. If you really want to get into sort of Nclothe, you really need to learn all these sort of settings and what they do, and it will help you a lot. I'm not super hot on all the Nclothe settings, but so we have kind of broken it there, so let's undo that. Definitely breaking a lot now. Let's change this back to 3. So it's completely breaking around here, so let's add our thickness back up to 0.08. Let's view that, let's see how. And change it to 0.08 as well. This could just be our collision, it's just too thin. Like at the end of the day, we're not seeing what's connecting it, so from the looks of it, that was mostly our problem, was our collision thickness was a bit too thin. It's good to sort of get this sort of all figured out on the lower res, because when we've done this, we might want to step up. Once this is sort of gone through, we can have a look, and we might just go back to the higher res one and just use these settings. But we may not need to. This might be absolutely fine as it is. It's looking pretty good. So if we just let that solve all the way through so it sort of settles. Got something pretty decent. It's pretty lumpy around the bottom, but we can probably smooth that out. like when you look at it from distance, you can see that it's definitely a battery pack. So I might actually frame 30, change that to -4. Change it to 50. Pretty sure the bend fall off angle, the lower it gets, the restitution angle. Let's change it to 0.1. Let's see if that breaks it. So it might take a while to go through, but we can get to a point where we could probably just relax. If we're not getting what we want from this, like you could spend a long time getting this absolutely perfect, but we could probably just smooth it out using the sculpting tools. I do want to try these settings one more time on the high res though, so we'll try that and see if we get a better result. I think it's probably because I had my collision thickness set a bit too low for what we're doing. Hopefully this should start sucking it in a bit, making it a bit tighter. It should start to settle now. It's probably what you just don't want to do. You want to make sure you got the right amount of keyframes. Well, just not loads, so you don't have to sit through something processing for that long. Cool. That's looking pretty actually. Got some rough geometry around the edges. Pretty happy with that actually. It's looking, obviously this cable, let's just ignore the cable, we've just got it there for a placement. I'm quite happy with that. So what I'm gonna do, do I want to cache that out and leave it, or I'm pretty happy with that, so I'm just going to try it. That's fine. So what I'm going to do is just Control D to duplicate that. I'm just going to call this low res wrap, then freeze and delete the history off that and hide it. So that's just baked that geo, and I've still got this as the Nclothe. So if I disable that, I'm going to hide that. Let me go back to my first frame, and I'm going to go to my presets. I'm going to save Nclothe preset, and I'm just going to call it shrink wrap, and it will probably overwrite the one we saved earlier. I was like, yep. Oh, not that one. I want to unhide that one. This was our super high res one that took quite a while. So I'm just going to go with my presets and replace all selected. So we still need to keyframe to Nclothe, so there's a keyframe on 15. Oh, actually, oh, that's not good. I must have accidentally left a keyframe on it, so it kind of went up and down. Okay, so it might have actually helped it, sort of relaxing it. So by frame 30, I'm just going to have it on -6. Set key. Set key. Just going to check my settings. Thickness 0.8. 0.8. And I'm going to put this back to start, press play. Oh, why did that go so quick? Oh, it's not enabled, so make sure you enable it. Press play. Now this will probably take quite a while. We may not get a better result. So I was quite happy with that, so I duplicated that. And I think if this doesn't look very good on this one, I'll probably just go with my low res one. So I'm quite happy how that looks. Obviously we're going to get much more detail on the shrink wrap, but we probably don't want a huge amount of detail, to be honest, because it's probably going to sort of be over the top quite a bit. But I just wanted to see how it is. It's worth I just wanted to try it for one more sort of go with the high res, and if it doesn't work out, we can just it's looking pretty good. It's quite jaggedy down at the bottom, so we'll have to see how that goes. It's been quite a long tutorial on something like this. Mostly just waiting for sims and stuff, but hopefully it'll give you a good idea if like you could use this on other things. Quick shrink wrap on something. And I've just been trying to get it all in the sort of simulation, but we can probably smooth out a lot of these weird bits. I kind of like these wrinkly bits though. It adds a bit to it. Obviously not down here, this looks a bit messed up. But hopefully that should settle over these frames. So at least we'll have options. I'm happy with the low res one. It's just more of a curiosity to see how it deals with the high res mesh as well. But I'm sure with lots more time we can get it a lot nicer. But for what it is, we don't need it. We don't need it like super amazing from this. We can just quickly smooth out in the sculpt. It looks like it could just be getting a bit too wrinkly. But if you want to get into effects and all that sort of stuff, not that you probably use this, you'll probably be all in Houdini, but it's probably what you'll spend most of your life doing, is just waiting for sims. So hopefully this should start to relax a little bit. It might be quicker on your computer, you might have a better computer than I do. It might be longer. Hopefully it should take too long. We got 30 frames. But like I say, once we've done this, we can smooth a lot of this out, because it doesn't matter if it... all we need is the shape. We're not going to render this with those batteries on the inside, we just want this shape. See, it's now starting to pull in on the sides. This might just be too much for what we need, maybe. I don't know. We just have to wait and see. Hopefully it should be okay. So the same with these cables. We can sort of, once we've got this placed and locked in, we can do like all the cabling stuff. Is like the last thing that I'll always do, because it means you just have to route it and sort of place it in the correct place and bend it round. So you don't want to be placing wires too soon. It definitely wants to be making wires and stuff. Wants to be your last sort of thing that you do, because hopefully you've then done like a couple updates on the blocking positions of stuff and placed everything that you've made and made it look nice. This is looking pretty decent. It's just taking a long time, isn't it? Doesn't seem to be sucking in as much as it did on the low res one. Lots of strange stuff going on here though, which I'm not too keen on. So hopefully in these last frames, they should start to smooth out a bit, suck in. I know it's taken quite a long time. You're probably just sat watching this. I just don't want to fast forward through it so you can sort of see. You can see it start to relax out a bit. I'm not sure if it looks as good though. Don't really like how it's done this bit. It doesn't seem to suck it in as much. We'll wait to the end to decide. We might just be at a funny angle, like we don't really see it. It's starting to look really nice up here though. It's just, we'll need to smooth it out, I think, and smooth this out. Because it's kind of it's acting like a balloon, right? So it's going to wrinkle in places, so it might actually be a nice effect that we have. these dark patches where it's sort of showing black through it. We will have to smooth that out for sure. It's taken a while. Not long now, 6 more frames, and we'll probably call it that. We won't do that again because that takes quite a long time. I might fast forward through it just so you don't have to see it, but I don't think it's going to get much better in this time. But we can just wait the last 2 frames now. And with the cables, we will just leave them to the end. Leave these just as placeholders because we'll make them much nicer. One more frame. Cool, so that's that done. And now we can look around. And it's kind of okay. I actually think the low res one was better. Got lots of odd stuff happening. So I'm just going to Control D that. Turn off all my Ncloths. Make sure they're all off. I'm just going to freeze and delete all the history on that and hide that. So now we have our low res one, which I think actually looks way better looking at it now compared to this. Obviously we've got, well, it's kind of broken down here, so it was worth trying. Let's actually check our low res one that's not done that as well. So yeah, I'm just going to use my low res one. Sorry for. And what we can do is just use our relax tool on these edges. Because we're only doing it on the sharp edges. Because although the batteries are showing through in some places, we don't have to have the whole battery there. See, it's showing through there. We can just move the battery up so it's not being pulled out. The same here. So I just want to remove all these sharp edges. Only using the relax tool, not smoothing it. So I want it to keep its shape. We've got something. What happened there? Let's try and smooth that. There you go. I'm just going to go around and just clean this up. And if it is kind of still, see, smoothing it's a little bit too harsh. So I'm just going to use my relax. And it should be good enough for what we need. Then in any other places where it's kind of coming through and it's not done what we want, we can just pull this out and smooth it. So if you just select the vertice and just pull it out till it's sort of, you can adjust the vertices so they're kind of smoothed, not jagged. Cool. So we've just got this bit here which we can just quickly fix. So I think we're pretty much done. We've done our shrink wrap, and if we just, let's put our thong light. Oh. Turn our default shade off. You can see we got a pretty good result here. It's looking pretty nice. If we look on top, we can see there's clearly batteries in there and stuff. We've got some faceting there. And some bits poking out here. Let's fix those bits. Just going to make sure this is round, because we've probably over smoothed it in some places, but, and you can see that's looking pretty good. We've got, it looks like there's loads of detail under there, and it looks like there's batteries under there basically. So yeah, we're pretty much done. So if you've enjoyed this tutorial, hit that like button and subscribe for more like this.